performing acts out there, keep you entertained. There's like break dancers and musicians. There's a new guy this year that bounces around on a pogo stick. Pogo Fred. Sounds kind of stupid, but it's pretty cool. And it's on cobblestone, which is extra impressive. So the first neighborhood we're going to drive through and talk about on the tour is off to the left-hand side. This is the north end of Boston. Really great neighborhood, just first started building homes towards the left in the north end. So that does actually mean that a lot of these streets in the north end still date back to the 16 and 1700s. And as much as I would love to drive directly through the neighborhood and maybe bring it right up to the base of Paul Revere's house, the last time I tried to do that in a vehicle this big, I actually had to get backed out of the neighborhood with a police escort. And the house was 90 years old and full of rock by the time Paul Revere even moved in. We like to refer to it as the Paul Revere house, but he only lived in the house from 1770 up until 1800. It was about 30 years of his life. But Paul Revere actually lived to be 83 years old. The alleyway, there it is. Steeple of the Old North Church. You'll see that in a bunch of different neighborhoods. We used that steeple as a way to let Paul Revere know across the harbor about how the British were moving through Boston that night. Depending on the route they took through the city, it could have made the significant time difference in their journey overall. And it was kind of like a race to get to Lexington. So we would have put one lantern in the steeple to see if the British took the land route through Boston, if they marched on foot, which is really slow, or two lanterns if they hopped in some boats and took the more time-efficient sea route across the harbor instead. And if you've ever heard the famous poem about Paul Revere's Midnight Ride, you might remember those words, "One if by land, two if by sea, and I on the opposite shore shall be." That's all the Freedom Trail is. 2 red bricks on a line. Welcome to Boston, across the bridge, and a nice little view of the Boston Harbor towards the right. And the first thing you might notice if you look straight ahead into Charlestown is what kind of looks like the Washington Monument. That big tall obelisk monument marks the spot where the first major battle of the Revolutionary War was fought, the Battle of Bunker Hill. It was fought on June 17, 1775. It was one of the bloodiest battles of the Revolutionary War, and it was a British victory. The Americans actually lost the Battle of Bunker Hill. People get a little confused as to why we chose to build the tallest monument in the area for a battle that we lost. But when you think back to the beginning of the Revolutionary War and you just sort of think about the American Army of Boston, way back in 1775, you're honestly one of the worst armies in the world back then. Yeah. Very good, very top of the hill. That is just what devastated the British Army. The Americans retreated, but we only lost about 400 men. The British that day lost over 1,000. And they lost about half of their officers that day as well. I think it was 19 officers went down in one battle. At this point at the beginning of the war, we really didn't care too much about honor. We were just trying to pick off anyone that looked important. But it's referred to as a Pyrrhic victory for the British, but it was that big boost of confidence the American troops were looking for at the beginning of the war. And it showed all the other colonies that we could actually be this formidable force against the British. So we pull into the Navy Yard towards the right through the fence, you get a nice view of the USS Constitution that's docked here. The oldest commissioned warship afloat in the world. The Constitution is a 221-year-old 44-gun heavy frigate. Literally the third ship that was ever built as part of the United States Navy. And they offer tours on board the ship throughout the day. You need to have some sort of photo ID to get into the database. And you can still go to the Warren Tavern today if you want to grab a nice cool drink or maybe a plate of nachos or something. But you want to keep in mind that the Warren Tavern is where folks like Benjamin Franklin and Paul Revere, even George Washington was known to grab a couple of brews and nachos.
I was going to say, did he eat nachos?
The Warren Tavern. Those revolutionary.
Martha used to pack them.
So we're going to make our way back into Boston. Next stop is stop 5 at the TD Garden. Got that huge cable stayed bridge towards the right there. That's one of the more recognizable sites in Boston these days. It's called the Zakim Bridge. It's Interstate 93. But the Zakim Bridge, it was built in 2003 as part of the big construction project that was in Boston. You might notice all the southbound traffic on the bridge disappears into a highway that's now below the city. So when we make it right towards the garden for stop 5, I could probably get you lined up for a nice head-on view of the Zakim Bridge. For a nice photo of the bridge, we'll come back to it in a few moments. You can always just take a look at the old, decrepit-looking bridge we're on right now. Like an emperor memorial, that way it just kind of fits in with all the historic imagery that's in Charleston. It's a nice view of the bridge. Sometimes I just like to sit here for an extra moment to really soak in this view. The umbrella's out in front that's actually called the Thor's Bar and Grill. Name that whole bar after Bobby Orr's iconic goal. sometimes I just feel the need to point out the party because I feel like you don't really believe me when I tell you there's that Early building. In Boston, we call it the Corduroy building. It was built in the late 1960s. Pretty groovy looking building back then. If anyone's ever seen that movie, The Departed, the Martin Scorsese movie that was shot in Boston, you might remember my doppelganger Matt Damon walking down those funny looking steps in front. They call that particular area the Hurley Building. It's the Massachusetts State Police headquarters during that movie, The Departed. And that's just one of many movies we filmed in Boston recently. We're turning into this little mini Hollywood here now. Got a little movie set going on over here. The subway tunnel. If you walk through the bottom of the towers, there are these vents below you where steam rises up as you walk through. So it's a very deep, very nice to visit. And then directly on the other side of the memorial, you can get a bite to eat at the oldest continuously run restaurant in the United States. It's called the Union Oyster House. It's the one with the brown awnings where it says Union Goods. They've been serving oysters at the Union Oyster House since 1826. Over 192 years of being one of the most historic buildings in American history. It's called Faneuil Hall. I wish you could see it. Faneuil Hall, it's a building that dates back to 1742. It's the building we actually refer to as being the cradle of liberty in Boston. Faneuil Hall is essentially the birthplace of the American Revolution. The second floor of the building is the big meeting hall. That's where we held all these important town meetings encouraging our independence from Great Britain before the Revolutionary War. So for example, you would get these big terms like no taxation without representation made famous inside that building, Faneuil Hall. And I know they're doing a whole bunch of work on the exterior, but you can visit the building.
This is the state church.
Hop right up to the second floor, check out the great meeting hall. And then right behind is pretty much where the British had all of their meetings before the Revolutionary War. The Old State House served as the seat of the Royal British Government in Boston from 1713 up until 1776. In fact, when Boston was liberated from the British government in 1776, that little white balcony is where we read the Declaration of Independence for the very first time in Boston. It was July 18th, 1776. But there's a great little museum on the Freedom Trail you can visit at the Old State House these days if you're interested. Let me tell you what actually happened with the Boston Massacre. You had 9 innocent British soldiers that were stationed in front of the Old State House that were just hanging out, doing their job. And they were one night randomly confronted by this riotous mob of Bostonians. And I'm talking 200 angry Boston colonists surrounding 9 British soldiers. And they started taunting the soldiers by throwing snowballs filled with nails and glass at them, and rocks and big chunks of ice, to the point where the British soldiers were fearing for their lives. And then at one point, one of the British soldiers got clubbed in the head so hard that when he fell to the ground, his musket misfired. There was no official order to fire, his gun just went off. Everyone freaked out. Chaos ensued. 5 Boston colonists ended up getting shot and losing their lives. Yeah, in a weird sort of way, it was kind of like self-defense. But we just like to call it a massacre. Back to 1630. That'll make it the oldest one in Boston. 1630 is pretty much the very year Boston was founded as a city. This is where the earliest European settlers are going to be buried. We even have a pilgrim off the Mayflower that's buried towards the left. Came here in 1620. Her name was Mary Chilton. Mary Chilton is widely regarded to be the first European woman to step foot on the Plymouth Rock. Wow. I don't even think it gets much older than that in the area when it comes to all the European settlers. Big one. If you look towards the right, the first green headstone on the corner, right on the other side of this group of people, would be Samuel Adams grave. So, you got Sam Adams buried about 20 feet to the right. And about 20 feet to the left, you have the Beantown Pub. Yeah, there's no historical significance to the Beantown Pub, but it is the only place in the world where you can sip a cold Sam Adams and actually toast a Sam cold Sam Adams. America's oldest public city park, the Boston Common, dates back to 1634 when it was established as a public park.
Down the hill.
If you walk around the Boston Common on a day like today, you have all kinds of statues.
I didn't see this part of the park.
Because we weren't, like you said, it's over.
But imagine back in the 1630s, this was 48 acres of land that was all common grazing ground for Puritan livestock and cattle. It was just a big cow pasture. It was also used as the common punishment grounds throughout the 1600s. So this is where the stockades would have been located. Or the gallows, a lot of people call that the hanging tree. It was this huge oak tree. There's actually been more public hangings on the Boston Common than anywhere else in the United States. To make it kind of a spooky area to walk around.
Yeah.
I've actually had people tell me that if you come down here at 2 o'clock in the morning, you might run into the ghost of Margaret Jones. Margaret Jones is the first accused witch to be hanged in the 1600s. That was actually on the Boston Common. Stewart is buried. Has anybody on board ever heard of that man, Gilbert Stewart? should all be familiar with. He's a very famous portrait painter. He's the guy that painted the portrait of George Washington that you see on the American $1 bill. He pretty much painted the famous portraits of like the first 6 American presidents. If you actually go to the Museum of Fine Art that's in Boston, they have the original portrait of George Washington that's on the $1 bill hanging up in the MFA Boston. This is stop number 7. Was anybody looking to hop off stops? Nice time here to walk around. There's upwards of 80 different species of tree from all around the world planted in the public garden. They have little plaques next to each tree that tell what kind of tree it is. We have the swan boat rides in the center that are really cute and famous as well. We've actually been operating those swan boat rides every summer in the public garden since 1877. Well, basically just this one person that paddles about 20 other people across the swan pond in a cute little boat that looks just like a swan. It is a tradition. Pretty much the only scene from that TV show Cheers that was actually filmed in the city of Boston.
Oh, this beacon street here? Or?
Yeah, everything else is filmed on a big soundstage in Burbank, California. All the outside facade shots from the show would be the actual bar the creators based the show Cheers on. It's called the Bull and Finch Pub. Been around for a long time, it's now been called Cheers. That is to get big fans of the TV show from all around the world that would come to Boston to walk inside that bar and become thoroughly disappointed. It doesn't even look like the inside of the show. It's really small. Some of the decorations are similar, but I think it was maybe 6 or 7 years ago they finally gave in and built that replica bar from the show above the original bar. So all you have to do now is just walk upstairs. At the big round bar, you can sit in the dorm seat and grab a brew.
It's a carousel.
You get a chance to walk around this neighborhood that's towards the left. It's a beautiful neighborhood called Beacon Hill. Really nice for photos. Beacon Hill is one of the wealthiest. Off stop number 8. You guys all good? Let me see if I can scoot in here. See if anybody up there has a city view now. So this will be stopping.
Oh, right.
Grab these folks. You guys all good to keep going? How many do you have in your group? 4? I got 1. The man on horseback is Colonel Robert Gould Shaw. He was the commanding officer of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment from the Civil War. 54th was the first free volunteer all-black regiment after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. So very proud to be fighting for the Union Army against slavery, even at half the pay of white Union soldiers. They got that nickname, the Glory Regiment. So most of the 54th was actually recruited in that neighborhood, Beacon Hill, that's right behind us at the African Meeting House. It's a little green dot design on the city view map. The Civil War, we called him Clayton Joe Hooker. And right back behind him, they actually refer to that as being the Hooker's entrance to the State House. Some jokes just write themselves. That's where you'd end up going for the tour Monday here, Frank. Sounds like we got a couple of jackhammers down here, so I might not try to compete with them too much. Hotel, very historic. It's called the Omni Parker House. It opened up in 1855. So that would make it the oldest continuously run hotel in the United States. It's where we invented our state dessert, the Boston Cream Pie. You get the original recipe here. It was invented in 1867 along with the Parker House roll. Towards the left down here, we can see our big statue of Benjamin Franklin right in front of Old City Hall. So Old City Hall served as the mayor's office in Boston from 1865 until 1969. For over 100 years, that building served as the mayor's office in Boston. And nowadays, it's a Ruth Chris Steakhouse. How about that? Come a long way. To Boston, so he sent 5,000 additional British soldiers into Boston to keep order and to occupy the city. And it ended up being that big occupation of Boston after the Tea Party that just kind of kick-started all the fighting and engagements of the Revolution. The Fort Point Channel, saltwater comes from the Boston Harbor straight ahead. And right on the Fort Point Channel towards the right, we'll see the Boston Tea Party Museum. So there are 2 replica ships from the Tea Party that were built as part of the museum here. As we try to take a right. So you have the Beaver on this side, the Eleanor's on the other side. You end up taking that tour of the Tea Party Museum, you get to end the whole tour by actually reenacting the Boston Tea Party. So you board the replica ships and you toss barrels over the sides of the ships. And huzzah. Not sure it gets a whole lot more fun and interactive than that. It's a really great tour, but the only thing is, I just always feel the need to point it out to you before you head right over there, just so that you're aware. Most of the museum tours you take along the Freedom Trail in Boston, they only cost like $2 or $3 a piece, and some of them are free. But just be aware that the Boston Tea Party Museum is $29. I don't know about you guys.